a late night for all of us last night. So I'll briefly let kind of everyone here introduce themselves, and then we'll sort of get stuck straight into a discussion.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Pieter Omvlee. I'm the founder of Sketch. Sketch is a Mac app for drawing user interfaces.
Hi, I'm Max, co-founder of Ulysses, writing app for Mac, iPad, and iPhone.
Hi everyone, my name is Oleksandr Kosovan. I'm the founder of MacPaw, and we develop CleanMyMac, Gemini, Setapp, and many other products for Mac.
My name is Pavlidis, co-founder CTO at Flixel. Our flagship app is Cinematograph Pro for Mac and iOS, and we got a few other apps as well.
Good morning. My name is Zhadanov. I'm vice president at Readdle, and you might have heard of us through our quite popular apps like Spark, Scanner Pro, Documents, and we've been on the App Store since the very first day, witnessed the whole evolution, so I think we have great stories to share.
Cool, thank you. And sort of, I think a lot of people in this room and sort of certainly up here have been kind of considering or transitioning to subscriptions for a long time, either in the App Store, outside of the App Store. And sort of, I think it's a tough thing to decide on and an even harder thing to roll out and communicate to customers. And I think sort of the two main things that we wanted to try and touch on today was sort of what types of application is a subscription model right for? Sort of what applications does it lend itself well to and perhaps not so much, and sort of kind of if it is the right model, kind of how do you price it, how do you go about communicating it to customers, and sort of grow a sustainable software business kind of with subscriptions. And I think to start, I think it'd be good to sort of hear from Mark a little bit. They've sort of been through basically every billing model with Cinematograph, sort of starting with perpetual licensing, kind of gradually moving over to subscriptions. And I sort of, what was the kind of real catalyst for you guys to sort of start making that move, and what are the things that you were monitoring sort of throughout the process?
Right, so the original motivation for that was because the month-to-month variance in revenue was very high. So up and down, month to month, it wasn't really consistent. So that was obviously a problem. Staffing, doing any kind of marketing activities, advertising, whatnot, you need to have some kind of sustained revenue to know how to predict and how to move forward from that. So that was the original motivator for being able to do it. And we started even before you could do it specifically for the app. It was strictly for our web services, and we slowly moved over. Get into all that if anybody's interested. But it's a long story, because we tried all of them, yeah.
And Max, was that like a sort of, I know that I think everybody here has sort of maybe read the Ulysses, the blog post.
The novella.
I mean, can you kind of talk us through that sort of experience and sort of how you guys came to the decision?
It's similar to what we just heard. I mean, and there's a lot of technical problems if you're on multiple platforms, Mac and iOS, and users come and ask, why do I have to pay for two apps when it's just one thing? And then there's, I don't know, if you have two platforms especially, then there's additional problems, like when people just update one of those and the other one, then they have mismatching features and then incompatibility and all that kind of stuff, yeah.
And sort of, obviously with Sketch, it's kind of been this sort of interesting road from kind of perpetual through to sort of this hybrid model in between, and sort of, why is there a reluctance to kind of going to a recurring model, and sort of why did you settle on this? And I know kind of a handful of apps now have kind of adopted this sort of hybrid model.
Well, so first, our motivation to go to subscription was not quite the same as what we've heard here. Like we are operating like in a very competitive market, and we found ourselves struggling with figuring out like which features are we going to build and when, because like we were coming up on version 4 of Sketch. and then you always want to ship with some high-profile features that are going to attract customers, or that are going to entice customers to upgrade. But there were so many big features that we wanted to build. So you start thinking, well, this big feature can't go in version 4, so that's a candidate for version 5. But if you still have to start working on version 4, then you know that version 5 is at least like 2.5, 3 years out. And in this highly competitive market we were in, we didn't want to have to work with that model anymore. We just wanted to build the features whenever we wanted to build them. And so it's like, well, if we just stop going with like major, minor versions completely, we don't have to think about how we're going to entice users. And so if we just do like quote-unquote subscription model, then we can just build the features that make sense. And we very deliberately chose the model that we have because we feel like the model that we have is a subscription in the way that you have magazine subscription. Like if you cancel your subscription, nobody comes to your house and takes away the magazines that you've already received. Whereas if you have a subscription with Netflix and you stop paying, then you've lost all access. And we felt that first model worked much better for us because our users create like documents and sketches that are really important to them. And if they stop paying, they lose access to those documents. It almost feels like you're holding them hostage. So we felt like we wanted to have, of course we need recurring revenue to be able to develop new features, but we didn't want to hold them hostage.
No, and I think it's sort of a good point that kind of leads us well into, I know Dennis, sort of Readdle have sort of several apps, sort of some of which you've chosen.
We have 7.
Yeah. Some of which you've chosen to go kind of completely freemium, some perpetually licensed, some subscription. And sort of it's kind of builds on Pieter's point of sort of what sort of types of apps lend themselves well to each model. And I agree with the point of sort of at the end of the day, we're all building software for customers. And sort of, yes, we have to build a sustainable business, but we don't want them to be beholden to us for sort of, we don't want to kind of hold their hostage, especially with their data and their files. And sort of how have you guys approached this with your products?
So I was just about to say the same thing about, like, we as developers think, and many developers who switch to subscription, they write blog posts why from the perspective of being a developer. I think it's a bit wrong, and I think we have to think about the customer, because our goal is to build great software for the customers. And so they can use it, and they can be happy about that, and they can pay for this, right? So, and that it highly depends on the type of the product or a service. So if you're using Sketch for work, then you will pay for this, or you're using Photoshop, right? Because that's the place where you work. And depending on the retention, the usage, and how you use it, I think if you look at the tools, let's say like our app Scanner Pro, like you would not use this every day. You would use it like once a week, once a month. So there is no good kind of subscription model for this product as it is right now. And I think it highly depends on the nature of a product.
How do you balance that with actually the need to build a software company? Like, you have to be able to pay people. You have to be able to continue to ship updates. Sort of.
Yeah, we have 135 people in the company. So we've been lucky to build great products that people love buying. Like PDF Expert is still the main revenue driver for the whole company. But
which isn't on subscription.
Right now it's one-time purchase, but we are kind of exploring ways how do we turn this app into a subscription product. But let's say with Spark, the email client, right? That's the place where you spend on average 2-3 hours per day, and adding kind of team collaboration features that people can use and discuss and share emails and create emails together. We feel that this is like enough value that we provide to ask for recurring kind of revenue. So the whole logic is that you must provide recurring value to your users so that you can charge recurring subscription.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the sort of Yeah, go ahead.
Just to comment on that a little bit further, it also depends on the use case. So, some apps you're using every day, like you guys. For our app, someone might use it maybe once a month, maybe once every 3 months. It's not something that you don't create cinemagraphs every day, all the time. At least most people don't. So the use case of that is very different. So asking somebody to pay up front with a big one-time license fee was difficult. This is something, at least for us, our model is something, this is new, they're not really sure what it is, they want to explore it. Yeah, there's a nice free trial and watermarked output, so you could at least get your hands around it. But there's still a huge barrier if there's a high one-time price point. So what does that mean? It either means you have to drop your price low to allow people to try it out, but then you drop your price low, and in our case, we're a niche product, and a niche product at a low price is not sustainable. So you need to have that up higher. So then you lose a big chunk of the market because they're not willing to do that. So this is where having a subscription model, at least you can change that pricing because you can get that lifetime value over a longer period of time, as well as introduce monthly pricing or different types of trials where they could, some of those customers could try that out for a shorter period of time, and maybe it works for them, great, and they'll continue on for a longer period of time, and others won't. And at least that way you get to realize some of that revenue over just a couple months from those customers that may not be long-term customers, but they never would have paid for an upfront license.
On like pricing and selling to those customers, are you optimizing, we've spoken about this before, but sort of, are you optimizing for that kind of lifetime value in a way that you know that some customers are going to cancel and resubscribe? And that sort of it's a utility, but it might be a sporadically used utility.
Yeah, so I guess we have there is excuse me, there is a chunk of our customer base that are win-backs. So they'll subscribe when we had monthly, they'll subscribe for a couple months, they'll cancel, and then 6 months down the road, they'll subscribe again for a little bit. And it's the nature of the product where it's like, oh, I have a project to do, I'm going to use this, I'll subscribe to it and come back. And those customers are great because the follow-up acquisition cost for them is zero. They're already familiar with it, they've already paid, they just don't need it right now. And it gives them the options to pay when they need it as they move forward.
Yeah, and I think Oleksandr, obviously with Setapp, which sort of has how many products in Setapp today?
Well, right now 117 great apps.
So, and sort of I think obviously subscription, for people who don't know, Setapp is a subscription service for Mac software, sort of pay once and sort of get access to all of these products. And sort of I think you probably better than most have some interesting insight into sort of what types of products are lending themselves really well, like sort of the utilities, is it the use every day? At what point does it make sense for these businesses to run a subscription model through Setapp or a similar service versus sort of running their own subscription model? And sort of where is the balance between those two things?
Well, first of all, our vision is to deliver continuous incremental updates to the customer, because when you do some great features of stuff, you want customers to have it right away. But for example, with our previous business model, we had major upgrades once per 3 years. So we had to deliver some bug fixes and keep a lot of great functionality for the major upgrade to justify the value of the upgrade. And this is when subscription works best for a lot of products, because if you want to continuously develop the product, the business model should support that as well. And this was the main vision behind Setapp. So we wanted to allow a subscription model to be accessible for a lot of developers. So if you do whatever kind of app you do, it can be one purpose application or everyday use app. It can benefit from one subscription, because you don't have to think about the churn rate in the subscription model, because this is what Setapp service takes care of. You just have to care that you deliver continuous value to your customers and you have the good retention rate to your app. So if you provide the value,
it actually feels sort of a little bit more kind of like a meritocracy in terms of sort of the highest quality apps that are delivering the most value on a consistent basis are going to be the ones that are sort of driving revenue for themselves through sort of alternate platforms like this. Sort of, I think kind of one of the interesting sort of side points on this is sort of around kind of pricing, and the thing that we've seen, and I think a few of you have wrote about over the last few years with sort of the willingness to pay for software, sort of especially at sort of higher price points, kind of diminishing sort of significantly over time. And it's sort of, do you think that we're going to get to a world where kind of more and more of these products are moving to subscription, and we're going to have a similar problem there? People are going to get subscription fatigue. Do you think sort of there is a need for this sort of more consolidated subscription? Do you think it's going to be moving to sort of these very, very utility everyday apps, sort of kind of living more and more in a subscription-based world? And sort of be interesting to hear how sort of you guys feel about that and trying to develop a sustainable business with sort of price points going down.
So on pricing, there was a big trend since we've launched our first app back in 2008 on the very first day of the App Store, and the price was $15 for Readdle docs. And then over years, we saw this, like, developers were competing, and then there was this race at the bottom in terms of pricing. Like, you would then decrease to like 15, 10, 5, $3. But back in 2015, we actually saw a trend where the prices were going back up. And it was a trend all over the App Store. So I think people are okay paying for great services and apps they use. I also think the big trend is there is in our productivity space, there is a major change in terms of the conglomeration, if you like. The big companies, they become bigger. Let's say Microsoft acquired Sunrise, the calendar app, right? They acquired Omvlee, which is now Outlook, and then there is Google Suite with all the products that actually are free to use, or like $5 to use, which is like, and then they have a different business model where they make money through advertising and getting your data. So you as a like independent developer can really compete in terms of pricing directly. So you have to come up with a different business model or a different product that people would actually go and buy.
Yeah.
Yes, we've been kind of bucking that trend in terms of instead of going down, going up. We made a few early mistakes of decreasing the price. So we started off with a high price point. We got featured on the store. We won an 88 4 years ago, and it was like, oh, lots of people are looking at this. Let's make it more accessible and drop the price. So yeah, that turned into a whole bunch of revenue for those 2 weeks. And that was it. And then what it also did, it still comes back to haunt us, because if you search for our app, there's a few hits to like an iMore article that comes up on the first page where it's like, hey, this app is $15. No, it's not. But people still have that belief that it is. So we've completely devalued the product then by doing that, by dropping that price. So that was, in retrospect, a bad idea, even though there was a short-term windfall of dropping the price. But yeah, so as we have, over time, we've just continuously increased the price, and the single biggest thing to lift our revenue has been increasing the price. All the other kind of marketing activities, things like that, they've helped, but the single biggest has been increasing our price.
How do you do the price? What's a fair price?
Well, I guess that it's one of those things that you got to figure out. But I guess in our case, the elasticity of demand is fairly vertical. So it isn't something where you need to compete on price. If you're providing value to someone. So our use case, for example, is we make it really easy and simple to create a cinema graph in a matter of seconds instead of taking hours or days in Photoshop, etc. So for people whose time is money, there's a very simple value proposition for them. This makes it really simple for me and really easy and speeds up my workflow. Done. I see value there. I'm willing to pay for that. How much? I don't know. Maybe it's even more than we're charging now. That's always what you got to figure out. But if you're just going down, there's a floor there. You can't go down any further. You're going to hit a point where, at least if you're going up, if you keep increasing your prices and revenue keeps going up, it means on the demand curve, like revenue goes like this, there's a point there that's the maximum. And if you keep raising prices and revenue goes up, it means you're going up that curve. At some point, you'll go over the top and you're going to start decreasing revenue. But what's the easy fix there is you just roll it back to whatever price point there is. And where you want to be is at that maximum of that curve. So the only way to figure that out is by going up and figuring out where that point is. And you can always scale that back.
We started with a similar story. We launched that first version of Sketch, version 2. Version 2 of Sketch was the first version that started getting slightly more popular, and then we got then we were in contact with Apple. They said, well, we think you can like increase your revenue if you drop the price and open it up to a wider audience. So we tried that for a month, and that didn't work. And so instead, so we went from like 49 to 39 or something, and ever since then we went up, and we're now at 99 for our license, and we just like. And like you said, like it's a professional app that people use to get their work done, and so $99 is not that much to ask, and so we've not seen this trend of prices going down at all, on the people being unwilling to pay. But we also felt like we couldn't raise the price higher, because while there are some people who would be happy to pay more, we have like a long tail of users whose needs are not that high, and for them, $99 seems to be the tipping point. So we tried a higher price once and didn't work, and then we went back. So we think we found that maximum.
So we have a bit different approach to pricing. So we believe that you never know unless you try. So the pricing needs to be tested, and like we do a lot of tests even on different markets. And since we are sold on Paddle, it allows us to get a lot of flexibility to sell on different prices, even on different countries. So and we from time to time test different prices and try to optimize the maximum revenue on certain market or even the channel. So if the customers come in from certain like marketplace or some certain channel, the price could be different for them, or can be discounted for like students or some other sources. And for example, in even in Europe, we have several different prices for for Germany and for Italy. It could be different.
So Spain, like more German Spain more than Italians?
Yeah. Well, I think you need to test the price continuously, and even when you develop the app further, you add more functionality, you get more brand awareness, so you can try even in 1 year to increase the price and see what effect it will have on your revenue. So it's okay to try.
I think, Max, when you moved from this sort of perpetually licensed model to subscriptions, there was pretty sort of dramatic kind of difference in price.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's that gone?
So software has always been too cheap. Like in the recent years at least, it was always too cheap, and we're now finally getting back to decent prices. And when we switched to subscription, it was a price increase. We went from, I think if you got the iPhone and the iPad app for $70 and the Mac app together for $70, we went to $40 a year for the subscription. You can now take the paid once price and calculate how long will the user use it, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and you end up with a price. But whatever you do, you probably land below $40 a year. So that was the increase. And I think it's important to communicate with the users and say, well, here's the issue. I need continuously work on the product. You want continuous updates, and I provide continuous value. So I need to make a price that just fits that situation. And you need to get them into the mindset. I think that's the most important thing about subscriptions, is that people understand that whatever you do is continuous work and providing continuous value, and that the only thing that can match that is continuous payment.
Yeah, and sort of one of the things that sort of has come up a few times is sort of actually making the switch from being a one-time sort of perpetually licensed app to a subscriptions app, and the quite significant change it means in terms of how you would run a software business, in terms of sort of going from having these sort of, be it yearly, every 2 years, every 3 years, massive spikes in revenue, and then sort of to kind of a much more steady sort of month-to-month, hopefully, increase. How sort of sort of, is there anything kind of anyone here can share about how they've navigated that, how sort of it's been on their business, and sort of what people need to watch out for in terms of planning?
So to get us started on the subscription, and to reward loyal users, we offered them a perpetual discount. So when I said the regular annual price is $40, then for someone who has bought any of our products previously, the price is $30 perpetual. So I mean, they're saving infinite amounts in infinite number of years, and that really helped us. Making them an offer, it really gave us a big spike of transition users on day one and the coming weeks, and that really helped us get into the subscription. Everybody that does subscription knows that there's a stretch, there's the long ramp of subscription, and it's still there, but having a lot of users and having access to them via mailing lists and within the app itself really helped us get started. And I think if we hadn't done an upgrade pricing, we would have had more struggles and more frustrated users, and that sort of kept the waves a bit lower than they would have been maybe. Yeah.
Sorry, question. So overall for you guys, once you moved from one-time purchase to subscription, did you see the increase of revenue, or did you see like less conversions, I guess? How many users actually stayed? That's the actual what's interesting for, I guess, everybody and for us as well, because we've never done this before.
So the thing is, the transition is not yet done. So for users that just bought right before the switch, we offer them free transition periods up to 1.5 years. So, and the switch is only 9 months ago, so we still have 9 months to go. But what you will see is a revenue drop, definitely. So that just comes from someone buying it for $70 versus someone subscribing for $5 a month. That first payment is way, way less. And over time, the user will pay the same amount, but not in that month and not in the next month. And so it has to build up. And even if they subscribe yearly for $40 or $30, then it still needs 2 or 3 years for you to get back to that same amount. So you really have a drop in revenue. It's like at least 50%, at least. But it grows over time. And I hope that we'll have the break even by the end of the year, which means 1.5 years of worse numbers than before.
Comment on that. So when we introduced subscriptions, we did it side by side with licenses, and we left it that way for about 2 years. And even the UI was very much side by side. You can choose a license, or you can choose the subscription, and you have the choice side by side. So over the course of about 6 months, we went from $0 in subscriptions to about 50-50. And it stayed about 50-50 all the way through. So it gave people those options. So kind of we dealt with that sudden drop of revenue that you're going to get, especially if you have a monthly pricing, by being able to bridge that by having the licenses. I would definitely recommend doing that because I don't know what situation you guys are in, but yeah, you're going to have a huge cash flow crunch because you're not getting your lifetime value up front. You're getting it over a period of time. So that becomes very difficult if that cash flow is important. But then over time, obviously, it gets much nicer and it's much more sustainable. I think in our case, we probably let it be that way for a little bit too long. A subtle change that we did was simply taking it from being side by side to just showing the subscription option and having a button at the bottom that said, want a license? And the idea is there that some people really want a license, so there was still an option for them. And within a short period of time, it went from 50-50 to 90-10. And then most recently in our last major updates, we removed the license option completely. You can still get it if someone really complains. We can direct them to the store and they can buy it. But just putting everybody into the subscription funnel is where we are now.
So the users that get the paid license, do they get updates forever for free? Is it perpetual, like lifetime subscription for one price?
So users that bought version 1 licenses, because of the nature of our app, we were able to nicely slice it. And because we're also on the Mac App Store and we wanted to do an in-place update, so in-place updates are possible with upgrade pricing on the Mac App Store. It's a pain and it's difficult for the developer, but it is possible. And the way we did that was simply by not removing any feature sets. So the features that you had with version 1, you still had access to. You could preview version 2 features, and the output would be watermarked. So it would be the free trial kind of mode. And then you could pay for an upgrade at a discounted price. And the same thing with version 2 licenses. It will be until maybe version 3. The whole idea about doing that was a whole problem, like that was a lot of work and it was difficult, and I would rather avoid doing that again. So that was the motivation for going on subscription as well, for not having to deal with the upgrade pricing and holding those features back and having all of that complexity in the code.
Yeah, I can see that as a total problem, like all those feature switches in there, and that's all. I mean, we've discussed all the options, like really all the options, and when we came to that, like we could stop shipping or enabling the features to users, and that just in my mind got so complicated, and then you need to update the file format, and then you need to opt out some features here and there and everywhere. I wouldn't recommend that. I've not done it, but he said it's not good.
Yeah, we've done all of that. We've done App Store subscriptions. We did App Store subscriptions before they had all the new stuff. I'm a masochist, I guess. I don't know.
So what happened in our case, so we were at Sketch version 3.4 or something, and we were not really consistent in when we would get updates out. Like 3.4 took us 6 months to get out, and we was like, okay, we're never going to do this again because that was too long. It was just a disaster. When we started to think about, okay, we need to move to some sort of subscription thing, like the first thing that was obvious, okay, we need to stop thinking in major and minor versions, and you need to get continuous updates out. You can't ask a user to pay you every month if you only have like an important update every 2 years. So the first thing we did was, okay, let's try to get a release to get like a release going every 2 months. So first from 3.4 to, as I said, 7 months or something, and then 3.5, 3.6 was all like in 2-month intervals. And we felt that with that we had both proven to ourselves and our customers that we could get updates out on a regular basis. And then when we announced that we were going to do this, we just, after version 3.7, went to version 38. And from then on, every 2 months, which is 39, 44, 41, just make it clear, we ship every 2 months. No update is special. Like we just released version 50. That is not version 5. It's not special in any way. It's just a version number. And I think this consistent set of updates is important if you're going to ask people to pay a subscription-like price.
One thing. I mean, I guess we just disagree slightly on that, but I don't like to put too much focus on those updates, because what you're doing is you're forcing yourself into shipping new features every 2 months. Yep. So okay, here we go. So the issue is that with paid apps also and paid updates is that you need to have an argument for users to make the update. So they need to have something that they want to pay for the update. And with the Sketch model, where you buy a license and after a year you don't get updates, you are basically still in the same model of paid updates, because the user will be able to continue to use the version that they have, but they will only get the new version if they want the new features that you're shipping. Mm-hmm. And so you're forcing yourself into shipping new features. Nope. I mean, if you have like infinite amount of users and money, then you're not actually forced. But the principle itself dictates that users will only upgrade to a new version when they see value in it, and so there must be something different to them, so they see value in it, and that is only communicatable over features and nobody, I mean, there will be people, but you can't do like, well, this is a major update and we only fix bugs and
Yeah, but
everybody will jump on it. That wouldn't happen.
If I can just interject, that's the entire point. There are no major updates. And we have an update, there's an update coming out every 2 months because we have like 10 developers working on Sketch. So every 2 months, there's always something ready. There's always something to go out. And for most of our users, that update will be free. And so it's fine, they will just download that update and it's fine. Of course, with every update that we release, there are always people for who who bought just over a year ago, and that means that they can't get this update. Maybe in this update there is nothing that appeals to them. There's no major new feature. Maybe just a few bug fixes. Maybe it's not a bug that they have run into, so they don't care. But that's fine. 2 months after, there is another update. And so if you get a few more updates out like that, eventually that user is going to think, oh, this is a feature that I like. Or now I'm so many versions behind, I can see all the things that have been added. Now it's time for me to update. So we never need to convince everybody that this update is interesting. Right. We just need to get updates out, and eventually we trust that there will be enough change that they will be enticed to update. Because we were saying, like, you want to continuously provide value to users. Well, that's what we are doing with those 2 months.
Can you share some numbers maybe? Like, what's the update? How many people actually, what's the conversion between the updates and stuff?
We find that they don't have exact numbers for this, but like many people, they renew as soon as there is an update that they can't have. But we find that after like 3 updates, most people who are still using the app have gotten the update.
So what I'm proposing is a slightly different approach to the subscription, in that what you are basically saying is you are paying the subscription for us to continue to work and make updates. And what I'm proposing is you are paying the subscription to be allowed to use the product. And I do work on the product and I make sure that it's good and stable and fine, but I'm not, I take the freedom to do whatever I want with it and make updates whenever I want it and ship whatever I want. And the subscription fee you're paying is for the permission to use it, and not for me to guarantee a certain number of updates. So that is what I'm proposing.
Yeah, I have a few comments on this. I think by this approach, you're really limiting the amount of people who can use your product. So what we're doing with Spark, we really inspired by what Slack did, right? It's free to use, like it gets into the team and people start using it until somebody from our dev team comes up to us and like, hey guys, we want to get a premium version, and now we're paying like $9,000 for Slack because everybody's using it. And I think kind of this direction, you can get much more share of the market and you can get much more users. And that's why what we're doing with Spark, by providing as much for free, even those collaboration features and discussion and email creation. And then when people, and give them enough value for some of the teams who need it to kind of to upgrade. And I think this opens up much bigger doors so we can see how big Slack is.
But do you sell the upgrade via I'm adding new features every other week, or are you selling the upgrade because this is something you can use and I don't make any commitments about how I'm going to develop it in the future?
Yeah, there is no like timeline, right? We have this premium package which they should be happy to pay for, and then that's what we sell.
So, but then that is the permission to use like the premium features. It's not. They're not paying you to continue to develop the premium features. They're paying to allow to use the premium features, and this is what I'm proposing.
Yeah, but I agree, but it's not permission. It's giving extra. Wording is very important here.
Yeah, I mean maybe it's the wrong word.
You make it sound as if we are forced to release those updates every 2 months, while we would much rather work on like a big update every year, and that is not the case at all. What we found in the past, that when we took too long to release a new update, there were so many things that we changed that we then found ourselves, okay, we accidentally introduced like a bug here or there. And if you release every 2 months, like for example, in an extreme case, Facebook has an update out of their app every Friday or something, or they have this continuous release train going. And we do something similar because this is how we like to develop the software. It's not that we are forced to.
But I can imagine that not every feature can be done in 2 months, right? Yeah, that's true. So you have people working on multiple features at the same time, and you always have something ready. I mean, that's a great situation to be in. I would want to get there as well. I'm not yet.
To Max's earlier point, I think it was the framing of it. So when you buy a license for a piece of software, it's basically you're buying to use that current version. You're buying the thing. If when I buy this is what I get, and that's the perception around it. Whereas I guess it's probably to our detriment too. We're saying, oh well, by going subscription model, it means we can give you these updates. You can do all of those things. But in reality, it is you're paying for the thing that you're getting today. You're not paying for some future feature coming in. And maybe that's our mistake of communicating in that way, that the subscriptions are for this future thing. Really, what you're unlocking is what you're being able to use today. And by being able to do that, then we can add features and we can make it better because we have money to be able to afford to do that. But it's a different framing that maybe gives that perception.
Yeah, and I think it's all about us sort of just continuously providing this sort of value, and in Pieter and Sketch's case, it's this aggregate value over time. It builds, and at some point, if the renewal doesn't happen immediately, it's going to happen at some point because they're going to hit the stepping point of this additional value. I do think that we have run out of time.
Can I have one note?
Yeah,
on
go
this
for it.
note? We're talking about value here, creation, doing great stuff for people, but let's be honest, people want free stuff. Like, nobody wants to pay. Let's be honest, and that's what we're hearing from everybody, what we're seeing.
But is it sustainable? For example, you have millions of users of free version, and you have to support infrastructure, which I believe is very expensive.
Okay. Maybe, if you don't mind, 10 seconds, I can wrap this up. So you got a lot of different perspectives on subscriptions here, but you'll note that every one of our businesses or our products are different, have different use cases. So not one of these, there's no silver bullet, there's not one. So whatever you're considering for your subscription business, like identify what fits best for your customers, I think is hopefully what you get out of that.
I also wanted to add, like, our approach, how we do it. Like, we're also releasing a new update of ClimaMax soon, and before even switching to subscription, we tested a virtual subscription update. So we actually run several weeks on our web store, and we said, hey, this current version is on a subscription, and we measured how many customers would buy it, and actually, based on our measurement, like we got 15% decrease in revenue, which is great because it was a yearly subscription, and it means if 15% next year will upgrade, this means that it is okay. So our job is to make sure that more customers will upgrade next year. And right now we are working on like full subscription update with like everything that is needed to support it, and this is how we approached it.
Do you have any final remarks? No?
They drag us off the stage. Okay. So my biggest point about subscription is really it's about principle. So and when you communicate the switch, don't try to like, well, this is this technical problem I have and this is that technical problem I have. Don't go down that road. Say, I provide value, you have to pay, and that's it. And don't get too deep down. Really, I mean, it just gets complicated. Yeah, I did the big blog post to explain it. But right now, when we sell to new customers, we just say this is the thing, and no explanation needed. Just go.
And I just wanted to basically repeat what you said. Like it depends on your situation, the market you're in, your customers, the way your company is set up, the kind of product that you make. It depends if you can do a subscription and what kind of subscription.
Cool. Thank you all very much. Before we get dragged off the stage, thank you all for coming, and sort of big round of applause for these guys.
Any quick questions? One or two?
Thank you. Sorry. A question I have is, have any of you guys encountered subscription fatigue? Like the theory that if everything is a subscription, like people don't want all of their stuff to be a subscription, and you start to get backlash, or, you know, like, yeah.
I get that remark every week. Every week someone comes and says that. And my answer is, it's true, there's only a certain number of subscriptions you can have, but I don't care. I mean, as long as you have my subscription. No, really, I mean, why do you blame me for all the other subscriptions, right? I mean, for me it makes sense. For my product it makes sense. I'm providing value, and this is how it works. And either you can get it or you can't get it, right? And that's the answer I give. Of course, we are moving away from I have 10,000 writing apps on my iPhone to I just have one. But yeah, right. That's a trend that's happening. But I'm not against it. And yeah.
I think in most of our case, we provide a professional product that people need, and if you're providing that kind of value, then if like for such a professional app, people don't want to pay on a recurring basis, then you have a much deeper problem than subscription fatigue, I think.
Well, our answer is Setapp, so we combine all the subscriptions into one place. But yeah, anyway, so subscription fatigue is already starting to happen, because more and more apps go into subscription, and I believe it will affect developers of products that people are used to pay for, because every month they will consider, okay, I'm paying already $100 per month for a subscription, and I will start kicking out some apps from my subscription plan.
Another question?
Hi, I have a question for Sketch. If my client does an update for Sketch and I don't want to do an update, I will not be able to see his file, for example. That's because I kept my old version, which is okay for me, and even though I pay subscription, and he's with the newest version.
So you're both on a valid quote unquote subscription. You've just not updated to the most recent version, whereas he has.
Exactly.
Well, it depends on the update. Like sometimes we add new features that are like an extension to the file format in some way, but we do try to keep it such that any change is minimal. So a few updates ago, we added prototyping features, and if you load a file created in that version in an old version that doesn't have that feature, you still see the entire document, just not those little prototyping things that you added. So we do try to maintain compatibility, but yeah, at a certain point, yeah, sorry, you'll have to update to the latest version. I think it's just unavoidable when you're working with documents. Like at a certain point, there'll be an incompatibility.
What I saw in Sketch is that you force me to do an update just because my clients are updating their Sketch, or like they downloading the latest versions, and that's the way I'm forced also to do an update. But maybe I don't use the prototyping tool on my work, but if somebody does a file in that version, I will not be able to do this. So I have to update it and keep keep it updated. But maybe I don't want to do an update because it's stable.
We can talk about this afterwards, I think. I think we're out of time, sorry.
Yeah, we are. Thank you very much. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, you guys. That was really a great panel. Thank you. We're going to turn the room pretty